Let's see here. Are we letting people in right now?
Yes, people are still coming in.
This is, I don't want to say anything important. Jeannie, are you in here as well? All right, well, I think that if most of you guys are in here, I'll go ahead and get started. So my name is Shailene Louise, and I'm so glad you guys are here today. This is my second Michael's class. I did my first one last Tuesday, and that one was a lot of fun. We did a little rosebud painting. This one is going to be a little bit more advanced, just slightly. We're going to do a poppy illustration today. So I have some references here for you. So we will be starting with drawing our subject or our sketch. It's a little bit more of a detailed flower. You can see that there's quite a few petals. We have kind of this kind of choppy looking lobed spiky leaf behind it. We have a little poppy bud. So we are going to start by sketching it, and then we're going to go into some color mixing like you see up here at the top. And then we will gradually start using those colors to create this illustration. We're going to use those colors to create form, some dimension, and just make your poppy kind of pop off the page a little bit. So it's going to be a good one. If you might have already gotten this in your email, this sketch. If you feel kind of unsure about sketching along with me, and I'm going to be going super slow, I'm going to try and make it as straightforward as I can. But if you feel kind of insecure about your drawing abilities, what you can do is you can print it out with printer paper, hold it up against a bright window, and then hold your watercolor paper over it and then sketch it. And then it kind of works like almost like a light box. So that's a nice little hack if you don't feel confident, but I would encourage you to just give it a try and try your best to just, put aside perfectionism. However you're able to sketch is going to be more than good enough. So if we can switch to the overhead view, Lindsay, I'm going to start talking about some supplies I'm going to use. All right. So here is the paper I'm going to use. This is a Winsor and Newton. Can you see that? Yeah. So this is Winsor Newton watercolor paper. This is cold press, and it's 140 pounds. So cold press paper is the most popular type of watercolor paper. It has this like really beautiful kind of rough texture to it. I think they say it's heavily toothed is the term. There's also another type of watercolor paper that I like called hot press paper, and that kind of paper is very smooth. Over here I have this is a Winsor and Newton Cotman pocket palette, and this is a great palette, just 12 colors, really great for traveling. So today the colors I'm going to be using are cadmium yellow, cadmium red, sap green, and then ultramarine blue. So we're just going to use 4 colors today. Keep it nice and simple. It's not like a super, we're not using all kinds of colors. So you can imagine how 4 colors could get us here pretty easily. I have with me some brushes. So I have 3 different sizes today. Actually that's the wrong size. I'm going to use a size 6, a size 4. These are both round. And then I'm going to use a size 1. So I'll hold those up for you. Those are the Cotman Winsor Newton round brushes. I will typically use like the smaller brush for more like detail work. The larger brush here I like because it holds quite a bit of water. And then this medium brush I'll use for like smoothing out color as I go. And I'll kind of try and keep track of what type of brushes I'm using and make mention of it. Besides that, I'm using an F pencil for my sketch, but if you just have like a click pencil or any kind of pencil, it's totally fine. You don't have to get fancy with the pencil. I like the F pencil because I find that I can erase it fairly easily after the painting is totally dry. I'm using just a terry cloth towel to blot with, and then I just have a cup of water here and a mixing palette. So to get started, we're going to do our sketch. So this part, don't feel intimidated. It's going to be just fine. As I said, whatever level you're able to draw today is totally fine. So I'll pull this into frame so you can see it. It might be helpful for you if you were to grab the sketch in your email and use that as your reference. But here we go. Let's give it a try. So I'm not going to worry about getting the, I'm not measuring anything. I don't want it to be exactly perfect, but I'm just going to try my best here. So I'm going to start by just doing kind of a loose, kind of almost like an egg oval shape. And I'm just drawing some kind of loose lines just to kind of get the placement just right. And I want it to feel balanced on my paper. I want it to feel kind of equal distance away from each side, right and left. Does not need to be perfect though. So loosely get your shape right. There you go, pretty easy. Okay, and then next step is I'm going to draw another oval in the very center that matches the shape of my larger circle, oval, I mean. So match that size, and then another one right on the inside. So it's kind of like this target, or like a little donut in the center. Okay. All right, so after you do that, we're gonna wait, and then we're gonna come back and fill in the petals in a bit. But I'm gonna start by doing this stem. And you'll notice the stem has it's not like just a straight stick, right? It's kind of has kind of a bit of an S curve to it. So kind of determining where it would make sense for the stem to be coming out in relation to the center of the flower. You just draw an imaginary line down and then give it some bend. And then I'm going to go along the side of it, so give it a little bit of width. Now the poppy bud that is coming up and to the right. So trying to make the stem about as thick as the main stem. Okay. And then I'm going to draw a poppy bud, just coming right down here. I'm actually going to make mine a bit more of an oval shape than my sketch. This sketch, I probably drew this more of a circular shape, but I decided I kind of prefer a more oval shape. I'll make that even a little bit bigger. And I know this probably looks like kind of scruffy, kind of a scruffy drawing, but I don't know, it kind of helps me to place things out if I don't draw too hard of lines to get started. Okay, that's all feeling good. So now I'm going to do what I would consider this leaf that I'm about to draw the hardest part of the sketch. Just personally, I find it to be a little bit difficult, but it is also the part that your eye is going to be drawn to this leaf the least in this whole painting, because we're going to paint our leaf super light. So, it doesn't need to be perfect. Just real quick, I'm going to make mention of this leaf. Let's just observe it real quick. So this is, I think we call these like heavily lobed leaves. So, and they're very irregular. They don't have kind of like a specific perfect pattern to them. They kind of just grow out sort of sporadically and randomly, and they have these little toothed edges. So the way I'm going to paint or draw this is I'm going to start by drawing this vein that goes all the way down, okay? So I'm going to start about right here and get that center vein that goes all the way down, and then it intersects with the stem, okay? So we're going to have that kind of as our anchor point as we draw these heavily lobed leaves are going to be growing off of each side of that, okay? So I'll start over here on the right side and just draw this little leaf that comes out here, go back in, and then we'll go out. If you feel kind of, nervous about this part, you can also just make your leaf come up to right here, and you can just draw like just this part if you want to, or just maybe a couple that are going up. You don't have to make it as detailed as this. And the chances are very good that my drawing is not going to look exactly like my sketch. Just some random little points are coming up. And then whenever we come back down, you can just make these curves just kind of a gentle U shape and then go back out. You'll notice that these parts are pointy, but then when we come back in, we kind of have a gentle little U shape, okay? So not the easiest leaves, I'll give you that, but they're very interesting. All right. All right, so I'm going to hold this up for you guys, just in case anybody wants to see that as a reference. So you can see it's not perfect. I have 3, lobed leaves going off on that side, and then I technically only have 2 there. I have these little baby offshoots coming there. So, all right, and then after I do that, what I'll do is I'm going to draw these little veins that are coming up into the leaflets. Okay, so just all the way up. Anywhere where you have a little spike, just go ahead and draw a little line that's reaching up into it, a little vein. Okay, so I'll hold that up again. Do you see how I drew those veins that are reaching up into those little spiked leaves? Right. So now I'm going to finish sketching out our petals. So you can see that I kind of drew this center stamen area. I gave it a lot of detail in my sketch, and it's kind of wavy, kind of looks like an amoeba or some sort of cell. I'm not going to worry about doing that for right now, but I just want to get my petal placements just right, okay? So I'm going to start with this petal that's just underneath, and I'm going to make both of these on the same plane. So I'm going to start by doing this leaf right here that's coming just right out underneath it. Kind of wave it just a bit. I'm holding my pencil about halfway up because I find that that kind of helps me to just not be as controlled in my drawing. So I'm just kind of letting the paper, letting the little texture in the paper pull it every which way and make it kind of uneven. All right, so there's the first petal. I'm going to do this petal that's just off to the left. So it goes a little bit up at the top, a little bit down. You don't need to copy this exactly, but just see if we can get a general idea. All right, I'm going to do this leaf right here, this petal, I mean. You'll notice that this petal has kind of, it looks like it's two separate petals almost, but I actually kind of drew this to be sort of a dip or like a fold in this petal. So this is kind of just a crease. And then this is the continuation of that petal behind it. So I'm going to go up and then just pull it straight back to the center. And then the continuation back here. I actually feel like I want that to be a little bit lower. And I'll hold this up for you in a second. I'm also erasing my loose circle that I drew earlier. Okay, that's where we're at so far. And I'm just going to keep going around the circle in this clockwise motion. So we'll go on to this petal right here. And curve it back in. And then this petal right here. Right. Just kind of give it a little bit of a ruffled edge. Okay. And then these four petals, 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice how they kind of stack, they're kind of staggered on top of each other. They kind of just, we're going to start by drawing this first one, and you'll see that the rest of them are easy because you just draw right underneath that, just kind of following that shape. So there's our first one, starting maybe halfway, almost halfway up that leaf. Same exact shape. Another one behind that leaf, or that petal. Keep saying that. And then my final petal is going to touch, it's going to cover all three of those. Okay. And then I think that the last detail I'm going to sketch, I'm going to draw just a few lines reaching out in certain spots in this petal. And I'm just going to later on come back and make those into like veins. Just some spots I'm going to highlight later with some darker paint. And after this, I'm going to start mixing some colors. So if you guys have any questions about the sketch process, let me know before I start doing that, and then I can take a minute. Jeannie, I'm not sure if you
can you hear me? It's Jeannie.
Yes, I can hear you now. Hi.
Hi. Sorry, everyone. Hurricane
Oh.
passing through New Jersey. Sorry to join so late.
All good.
We're getting lots of feedback. Great. We've got over 625 people joining us and drawing along.
That's amazing.
Maybe go, they're just asking to just, if everyone didn't, there's a reference to the sketch that was sent over. Shalene's going a bit quicker today because we have so many people that were following along nicely last time, but we'll slow the pace a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And as I mentioned before, like whatever level you're able to get your sketch to, if it's maybe you don't have as many petals, maybe your leaf can be a little bit smaller. If there's one certain spot where you're just really struggling, like just simplify it. It doesn't need to be too complicated. I think that you're still going to be able to really take something away from this and learn some techniques, even if your drawing isn't exactly where mine is at. I have a huge disadvantage of that I've been able to practice this like 4 or 5 times. So go easy on yourself. I know I'm able to sketch this all fairly quickly. And also I just wanted to make mention. So you'll notice that this flower like isn't like a regular circle shape. You'll notice it's like kind of like that oval like we mentioned. And this might be like a really obvious thing to say, but think about like, I'm gonna grab my candle lid here. If you're looking at a flower dead on, it would be a circle shape. But as soon as that flower is facing away towards the sun, which this flower is because we're seeing this stem, and that would mean the flower's facing somewhat up. So it turns that flower so that it becomes that oval shape. Sorry, I'm blocking the view a little bit. And another thing that kind of adds to that impression of the flower being turned away from us is these petals that I drew underneath it. So it gives us that like feeling like, oh, we can see underneath the flower just a little bit. Okay. So I think that I'm going to move forward a little bit. I am going to start just by doing the most simple, the simplest painting thing that I'm going to do in this whole process. And that's, I'm going to just grab some, oh, let me pull that into frame. So I'm going to grab just a little bit of cadmium yellow. I'm using my size 6 brush, but you could use whatever brush you want. And you can use whatever yellow you want. You don't have to use the exact paints I'm using. Just use whatever colors you have on hand. Okay, so go ahead and just rub some water into that paint, activate that color, loosen it up just a bit. I want to do a very heavy layer of yellow just in the center of our flower, the stamen. This area is called the stamen. We're going to cover the whole center area with a really strong yellow color, okay?
Hey, Charlene, we have a couple questions that are coming through. The colors and also the paper are included on the supply list, as well as the email that was sent along with the sketch, but you're using Cotman. Actually, you're using Cotman Watercolor, Cotman brushes, and I think the sizes were 6, 3, and 1. Is that right?
They are close. It's 6, 4, and 1.
6, 4, and 1, right. So if you could just let everybody know what size that you're working with when you're starting, and the colors are listed, but you're starting with cadmium. Color, right?
Actually, you know what I'm going to do is I'm gonna do some little swatches as I'm working. I know this was really helpful for the last class, so I'm going to just.
That really is. That's what was really helpful. So we'll keep tracking along on that. Thanks.
I'm going to, let's see here. Hopefully you can. My pencil is fairly light, but that right there is cadmium yellow. Can you see that okay? All right, so that's that's the easiest step of this painting, is just painting our center with cadmium yellow. Okay, so now I'm going to do a few more swatches like that. So I'm going to do a little bit of color mixing, and I am going to grab, this is the sap green color. This is clearly the color I use the most because I'm already starting to run out of it on my little palette here. So I'm going to grab some sap green, just drop a swatch right here. It's just a beautiful classic green color. SG for sap green, okay? Then I'm going to do a mix here on my palette. I'm going to do some sap green with cadmium yellow, okay? So just mixing those two colors, kind of a 50-50 mix, I would say. So sap green plus cadmium yellow. You'll notice that that's just, it feels definitely a lot more warm, kind of a warm green tone. So I'm gonna just go ahead and keep going with that color. Typically I would mix, you know, all the different varieties I can come up with and then see which one I like the absolute most. But I think this is actually a pretty nice and pretty true to actually what poppy leaves look like. And right now, just so you know, I'm grabbing some water, wetting that color, bringing it to my palette and creating just a little color puddle. Okay, so I want to have a good amount of water so that it flows just like that. Okay, good amount of water and color. But yes, as I was saying, poppy leaves in real life are they're very much a bright, kind of bold green color. So I typically like to make my colors more desaturated, but I am not going to do that for this one. Okay, so then once you have a good mixture, I'm actually going to grab a slightly smaller brush. This size 6 is a bit large for what I'm about to do. So I'm going to switch to size 4. If you want to use a 3 or 2, 5, you're probably going to be fine. You just want to have something that has a good point and that still holds a decent amount of water. Okay. So I'm going to start by I'm going to go right here at the top of these stems because I want these to dry first. And I'm doing what we call a wet on wet technique. So I'm bringing wet paint to a dry paper. So wet on dry. I don't know if I just said wet on wet or wet on dry, but I mean wet on dry. And you want to have a good amount of water in your brush so that color just flows nice and evenly, okay? If you find that your brush is kind of getting stuck and it's starting to create kind of little splotchy, blotchy spots, then there's just not enough water in your brush. So you just grab a little bit more, mix it in with your color like this. Just grab some color, mix it here, and then come back. And right now we're just doing a really even layer. Nothing too fancy yet. We'll get fancy later. But I just want to do a nice smooth layer.
Hey, Shelley, it's Judy again. Just a couple things. People were losing some people there, I guess, up in the Northeast where I am, and the storm's gone through. But just to keep up with everyone,
Yeah.
using the colors and the little swatches up in the top corner. And the color you're using now is a mixture of I believe cad yellow and the sap green.
Yes. And you'll notice this color is looking probably a little bit lighter than this, but it is still this mixture. It's just that I have a bit more water in my mix than I did right there. So there's more of a concentration of pigment, whereas right here, there's a lot more water and that makes it lighter. So I like to start my paintings with a water heavy mixture because I don't like to go too dark too quickly. With watercolor, it always, I don't know, you can always go dark later, but I just like to go on the safe side and keep it light at first and then do subsequent layers where I add those dark tones. And I love to add dark paint to my paintings, but I just like to do it later with a little bit more control and intention.
As well, last week we had some really great feedback, and as always, Michaels is going to be recording this class, and in 24 hours it'll be available on michaels.com/classes, and I'll put that in the feed. I believe it's already been posted. And as well, after the class, you'll also have a survey, which is one of the reasons we are back, because we had some really favorable replies. So follow along. As she said, it's very relaxing and it's very fluid. And as you mentioned, you could always go back and accent the colors.
Yes. One of my favorite watercolor painters, her name is Susan Hairston Tustain. I've taken a few of her classes, but I remember when I first watched one of her classes, she says like don't necessarily paint along the first time. Her recommendation was to watch her techniques and then watch again and paint with her. I'm not telling you to stop painting because I think you should definitely keep going, but if you feel like you're just kind of getting a little bit behind and frustrated, I would just encourage you to stick around, keep watching, just take a notice of the techniques I'm using. And then as Jeannie said, this class is going to be available for you to watch and pause and get your sketch really dialed in if you'd like to. But yeah, I would just encourage you to stick around no matter how you feel like you're doing right now. Okay. So that to me feels like a pretty good, pretty even layer of color. It's not perfect, but that's totally okay. That's, you know, flowers and plants and nature are never just like a perfect one shade of color. You usually see quite a few different ones. So I am now going to get a couple of other colors mixed. I am going to use the same brush. This is my size 4 brush. I'm going to just grab a quick little dab of cadmium red hue. So cadmium red hue. This is a very popular color. I use it quite a bit, and honestly, I've been using it for years in all of my paintings. It's gorgeous in its pure form, just like this, but it also looks amazing when you mix it with other colors. You can get a lot of varieties. So this is cadmium red. Okay. Now I'm going to just rub that color, get a little bit more paint in my bristles, and then I'm going to bring it to my palette because I'm going to do some mixing. Okay, so got a good amount of color here. Now I'm going to grab cadmium yellow, the next door neighbor, and I'm going to do like a 50-50 mix of those two colors. So cadmium red and cadmium yellow, and it's going to create this like beautiful kind of pumpkin orange tone. Right? So I'll write that right below. So that's cadmium red and cadmium yellow. So I am liking that color. I am going to use a larger brush. So I'm going to switch brushes. I'm just going to put this one aside for a moment. And grabbing my size 6 brush, I'm going to get some paint in the bristles, roll it around in there a little bit. So I want to have a good amount of water and color. And I think starting, let me make sure my green is dry. If your green is still drying, you might want to just start at the top and kind of wait to paint over here until the end, because we don't want our colors to bleed into one another. As this is a live class, I kind of have to just, you know, keep moving. If I was, you know, if this was like just on a random Tuesday that I was painting, I would wait for all my layers to be completely dried, but just got to be a little bit careful. So I'm going to just start by doing the same technique I did on the leaves, but with this color, and I'm going to cover all of these petals equally, okay? And because I don't have these little tiny details that I'm trying to, you know, not go outside the lines, I'm using my larger brush just because this, I can move a little quicker. It covers more space, it holds more water, and I'm not as concerned about staying in the lines right here. So it works great. And again, this technique is called wet on dry, wet on dry. Dry paper with a wet brush. I do love to use the other technique that's popular called wet on wet. And with that technique, I would have wet all of this with a clean brush with just clean water. And then I would have brought over the paint. And I like doing that because it helps to make the color just bleed out into the areas that you wet first so that it dries nice and smooth. It also helps to, this is kind of an advanced theory here, but it helps to seep the paper, the paint into the core of the paper so that it's just in there a little bit more and it's a little bit harder to move. Because very often watercolor, if it's not seeped into the paper, it's just sitting on the top. And it's really easy to mess things up when the paint is just sitting on top of the paper. Maybe a little bit of an advanced theory there. Maybe we can talk about that more in our next class. All right, so I'm almost finished here. Just finishing up these top 2 petals. Doing a fairly, this actually looks like a fairly even layer, probably even more of an even layer than it did down there. Every time my brush starts to feel a little bit dry, I just dab it in the water, rub it in the color, and come back and keep painting. This paper has quite a bit of texture to it, which I absolutely love. I typically use a bit more water when the paper has more of a rough texture like this. I'm not quite sure why. Maybe all the little ridges just kind of take up all that water really quickly.
Shalene, the type of paper you're using, why don't you just tell everyone, I believe.
Yes. I'll pull it up here so you can see it one more time.
Cold press?
Yes, this is cold pressed, and 140 pound. This is the Winsor & Newton spiral bound. So these are all just like free sheets of paper. I know that there are other kinds where they're called blocks, where the sides are all glued together, and that keeps your paper super, super flat so that you don't get that kind of warp and buckle. But I don't mind it when watercolor paper gets that little inconsistency. I actually feel like it looks very interesting to me personally. Another technique you can do if you don't want that buckle is you can actually tape the sides down to a hard surface. But again, I don't worry about it too much. Okay, so I am feeling like that's a good spot to move on. I'm going to do, let's see here, I'm going to do another mixture of green. So I'm using my same brush. This is the size 6 round brush. Okay, so I'm going to grab a strong mixture of sap green. And I'm going to actually grab a tiny bit of ultramarine blue. And I'll make a little swatch up here for you guys to see. So I'm kind of carefully just putting it next to the sap green, and then I slowly mix them together because I don't want to bring too much blue too quickly because it can kind of overpower it. But I want to try and do a nice cool green.
Shalene, the colors are coming up really vivid, soft, but yet they're pigmented, so they look very rich. And what you're using is the Cotman Pocket Sketchers box. So all the colors are there. It's really convenient to take it with you for some plein air painting or everything you need and more. Beyond these colors that you need in this palette are in that little kit.
Yep, you can mix quite a few different colors, which is amazing. Even just with these 4, I'm able to mix so many different types of greens and reds. Okay, so here's a little swatch of, this is sap green mixed with ultramarine blue. I actually really like how that looks. So that's just that it's sap green plus ultramarine blue. Okay, so this part is, this is going to be fun. So I'm actually going to switch to a slightly smaller brush. I'll go ahead and grab my size 4. And let's see here, where should I start? I'm going to start with, this is all feeling pretty dry. I am just going to go along, actually, rethinking that just a tiny bit. I'm going to grab my size 1 brush. I want to use my thinnest brush here. And I'm going to trace that vein going down the center of our leaf. Okay. And I'm going to trace these veins that are going up and outward. I'll hold this up for you in just one moment. And I'm going to turn it just a bit so I can reach this side a little bit better. Don't want to put the side of my hand into wet paint and mess it up. So I generally move my painting around quite a bit as I work. Whenever I do classes, I generally try to keep it upright though for you guys to see. And then the last vein just behind here.
That looks great, Shalene.
Makes sense?
You really see the definition.
Okay. So
A couple
once I do,
questions that we're getting. Obviously, the supplies are available at Michael's, but I noticed you have a unique palette there. Any palette will work, right? That's just something that's different from what you had last week, but nonetheless, any palette will work, and Michael's has very many to choose from.
Yep, I love the Sketcher one. It does have these little wells, which actually probably would work for something this size because I'm only using a few colors. I can get a bit messy. I need like a lot of space to mix with. So I'm actually just deepening those 2 colors, the sap green and the ultramarine blue. So you can see it's a bit darker than what I mixed over here. So I'm now going to darken my stems. So I'm going to start by just dropping some dark color right underneath the flower. So that kind of gives it the impression of being in shadow a bit. And then I am going to just trace the left side of my stem. And you definitely want to make sure your green is totally dry when you're doing this. If your layers of paint are a bit too heavy, too much water, you can go grab a blow dryer really quick, and that would be a helpful way to dry that color really quickly. So I'm also doing a very, very thin layer along the right side. And I'll hold that up for you because that might be a bit hard to see what I just did there. Okay, so the left side has a slightly thicker layer of paint, and then the right side I just did, right and left, right? I'm really bad at my left and right, but I did a very thin layer on the right side, okay? I'm gonna let that sit for just a minute, and then I'm going to do that same technique. Again, I'm using that size 4 Cotman round brush, okay? I'm going to drop that color right here underneath where the flower is kind of casting it into shadow a bit. And then using my same technique of laying just a bit thicker paint on the left side. And then a slightly thinner line on the right. You might want to use a smaller brush here because I am doing very small details. This brush has such a fine point that I am able to still do that detail fairly easy, but you might be a bit more confident if you use a smaller brush. Okay, I'm doing the same technique over here. And I'm going to just go along the side, and then with this bud, this is maybe my favorite part. I love this little bud. I'm going to drop quite a bit of color along the left side and kind of around the bottom. Drop, 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 drop. Instead of brushing it, if you want to leave even more color, you can just, I'll show you, I'll hold it up a bit. You can just dab that color, and that's how you can leave even more of it, okay? So if I want to leave even more color right here, I just use that tip and just drop that color, okay?
Shalene, we got an interesting chat. Someone was asking that could they use a watercolor pencil to create some of those darker lines?
Yes, absolutely. And if you have like a darker green, and if you wanted to just go along that line and then come back with your wet brush and kind of smooth it out, it would probably be a very similar effect. I don't use watercolor pencils often. I have a couple, but I honestly don't really use them. But I would imagine that, yeah, that would definitely work. And it might be easier to do these veins if you had a really sharp pencil like that. Okay, so.
But you could also emulate that same look with a finer point. I know you're using a 4 round, but you could probably go down and use the 1 as well.
This, yes, like this right here is, that's sharper than even a pencil usually would be. So I think this works just fine. You do have to have a bit more of a steady control using a watercolor brush versus a pencil. But I mean, to me, there's just no, I mean, personally, I just love the feel of brushes. I think you can just get a lot of variety. They're very versatile. Actually, speaking of versatile, I'm about to show you my kind of classic technique here. So I just cleaned off this brush and I blotted it. So I now just have a clean, slightly damp brush. This is the size 4. I'm just going to go along my stem and just very gently activate that color on both sides so that it feels a bit more soft. And let me hold that up and see if I can paint while I do this, because I really want you to see what I'm doing here. Just smoothing out that line so it just feels a bit more natural. My brush feels a little dry, so I'm blotting it, bringing it back. Does that make sense?
That was great the way that you were able to just feather that in. I think you're just soft, so it does have a more realistic feel.
Mm-hmm.
It's very forgiving, as we said earlier. It's your own style and how heavy-handed, you know, how light you want touch you have, or how much deeper you can make the leaves much deeper if you'd like. And the colors you're using are sap green and ultramarine.
Yep, right here.
For the
Yep, right there is the swatch of what I'm using for these veins, okay? And for the stems and for the veins, okay? So I'm going to smooth it out just a bit more right here. Really make it look like it's in shadow. And then I'm going to come over here to the right side, and then that same technique with the poppy, okay? Now I'm going to smooth it actually all the way across the poppy bud, because I want it to just feel a really soft gradient, no hard lines. Okay. Isn't that a cool trick? If you just leave darker color on one side, it gives it that look that it's a round shape. Okay, so I'm going to go over to the flower now, and we're going to wrap this up here pretty quickly. So I'm going to grab some more cadmium red. I want to do a really strong mixture of cadmium red, cadmium yellow. So this is the mixture that is right here, just so you know, cadmium red and cadmium yellow. I did a swatch here, but I'm about to make this just a tiny bit darker by adding some ultramarine blue, okay? I'm gonna start by putting it right here and then just gradually, I don't want it to be too dark too fast. And by adding that blue, I'm actually just kind of creating more of like a rust color, more of like a brownish red. I'm actually going to grab a little bit more of that cadmium red. And this is all kind of, you need to experiment with this yourself and find the balance of how much red you like, how much blue you like. You don't want to have too much blue or else you're going to turn it into just straight brown. And you don't want that. So here's a swatch. This is cadmium red, cadmium yellow, and ultramarine blue. So this is a 3-color mix here. cadmium red, cadmium yellow, ultramarine blue. And so I'm going to take that size 4 Cotman round that I'm using, and I'm going to go around the edge of these flowers, the edge of these petals, I should say. And I'm going to drop some color kind of just around, see as I'm dropping it underneath this petal here. So it kind of I'm going to create a little bit of a shadow there. I'm going to drop some shadow here because I want it to look like this petal is overlapping this petal just the tiniest bit. I just cleaned this one off a little bit using that brush to smooth that color. Okay, and I'm going to just keep moving around the flower and do that same technique. Okay, so I'm going to drop some shadow back here where our flower's folding, where that petal is folding. Drop that dark mixture of color. And
so essentially you're framing out the petals to create some definition, and then I have the feeling you're going to show us another one of your techniques to soften it.
So I'm actually using the same technique I did right here. I'm using the size 6 round brush, and I'm going to just smooth that color, feather it out, kind of create that soft, natural gradient. And that just gives it that really nice, you'll even notice that I'm leaving some spots light, and I'm making some spots dark, and I'm just kind of letting there be that, that very beautiful, delicate balance between dark and light, the dark and light values, and it just is going to create so much interest and kind of give it that pop off the page feel. Okay, so I'm going to keep moving. Drop some shadow back here. I'll go all along. I like to go along the edge of the petals. I'm just going to cover all of those edges right there. Switching brushes, the damp clean brush, and then I use it and then smooth that out. Keeping everything really soft, really natural. I'm actually going to even drop some more right here along the stamen, center, the stamen. And you'll notice this side's drying. It's a little bit lighter than it is over here because watercolor paper, watercolor paint, I should say, it always dries a bit lighter, just a little bit. Okay, so same technique, the dark edge. Then I'm switching to my damp clean brush and using that as my little sponge to kind of soften out, feather out that color.
Shelley, can you bring your flower closer up to the camera so we could get
Sure can.
to see the effects? That looks great. Yeah. So you're following along your sketch and you're creating the definition and then you're blending it.
And I'm going to work on this petal that's right underneath the stamen. And I'm going to, instead of doing the edge of this petal, this is the one petal that I'm doing a different technique. I'm actually going to just go along the part of the petal that's closest to the center of the flower. And I'm going to do that same technique, dropping color. Then I switch brushes, my clean damp brush, and then I'll smooth that color out towards the end of that petal. Okay, and then wrapping up these last 4 petals that I drew that are kind of overlapping each other, I really do want to create a strong shadow. Okay, so I'm using that color, dropping it right along here. And I will hold this up for you again just as soon as I do this one, if that would be helpful.
One of the other things that's being Cotman remarked on is that, you know, how you're feathering it. You're using a damp brush. It's not necessarily wet.
Yes, there's definitely moisture. Like you do need the moisture because the moisture in the brush is going to help smooth that color because water is what makes watercolor smooth. Like that's how you're able to like create like softness. So there does have to be a tiny bit of moisture. So that's why I blot it or I drop it in the water, rub it off the side. So I'm getting rid of some excess water and then just dabbing it. So it's still in there, but it's just not as wet, if that makes sense. Okay. Again, I'm going to do that same technique right here, drop that dark color. I'm actually going to do it for all of these just right away. So all of my bottom petals, I'll hold it up for you so you can see that. Just dropping that color kind of quickly, blotting it in there. Let me hold that up for you. It actually looks cool just kind of like that, doesn't it? It looks nice because it's dark. So you have that strong contrast, which looks really nice. My damp, clean brush, very gently, and I'm just touching those edges, just slightly touching them, and then drawing that color out into the rest of the petal. Do a little bit here, not too much. If you find you have too much,
really great feedback, Shalene, because people are just really, I think, amazed with their own talents. They're just saying how lovely the flowers
I love
being
that.
created before their own eyes. They're following along. They're giving some really good tips, and then we're just going to do some more accents because I think that we're getting close to the hour mark, and we do happen to lose quite a few people. But I want to encourage everyone to post your final artworks, your beautiful poppies, at hashtag Make It With Michael, and also hashtag Winsor Newton, so that we could see these lovely creations.
And Jeannie, do you want me to just keep going for everybody who wants to stick around and
absolutely keep going? You're at a good pace. We're actually making really good progress.
Good.
Considering the type of flower, because we did have a rosebud last week, which is a little, you know, we're building, you know, we're building up curating some classes. So we had rosebud last week, we have poppy this week, and there could be other flowers. Last week you showed some samples of some of your other creations, which could also give people some incentive to follow along on your social media as well and share their experiences. And at the end of the class, we'll have a survey that you'll get emailed, and we'd love to hear from you. We had some really positive feedback, and that will help us curate and deliver some lovely classes that will really keep everyone engaged go forward. So thanks for for their feedback and for participating.
All right, so I'm doing one more mix of color for my flowers. It's the same it's actually the same mixture here, but I'm actually going to mix even more of this ultramarine blue because I actually do want to create more of a red-brown, even stronger than that mix right there. So I'm kind of just, I say I'm eyeballing it. I just kind of look at it and then decide when it needs a little more red, when it needs a little bit more blue. But I'll show you the color I'm trying to achieve, and then you can try your best to get there as well. So this is probably a pretty good color here, maybe a bit more red. So I want a red-brown color, okay? So that is all, this is actually the same. I'm actually gonna mix a tiny bit more blue here. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint this center. I'm actually gonna switch brushes. I'll switch to the size 1. And I'm going to very gently just create some little dots and lines coming out from the very center. And I'll hold this up for you because it's probably kind of hard to see what I'm doing. Just dropping some color, drawing some lines, going out just the slightest bit. Okay. And then I'm going to go along the edge of the, I'm going to go along the edge of the stamen and do that same technique. So draw some lines, draw some dots. Running out of color just a bit, so I'm going to grab some more. It can be very inconsistent. It's going to look awesome. Just make sure you're using a thinner brush. This is that size 1 Cotman round. I don't want too much water, because if I have too much water here, I'm gonna lose that definition and lose my control just a little bit. So using a very thin brush with not too much water in it. I just kind of keep going till I kind of connect the center to the outer edge. Does that make sense? So I'm having darker little dots around the edge, darker in the very center, and then just gently kind of connecting them. It might be a little bit of that might be something that might take a little bit of practice, but the best thing you can do is just to add the color very slowly. Don't add too much dark color too quickly.
The definition really came out with that technique. So you're using the number 1 Cotman brush and you were dipping it into the deeper saturated color of the red and the ultramarine blue.
And the cadmium yellow. So it's 3 colors. Cadmium. Creates kind of a desaturated kind of dark color. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to do with these flowers, I'm going to add even just a little bit more cadmium red. So I'm going to drop color where I want it to be a little bit more exaggerated, maybe along those veins that I drew earlier. Maybe I want to add a little bit to the very edges. Basically just use your thin brush, add a little bit of definition. And this is the part that I feel like really creates that extra, like pops off the page, gives it that immediate interest, catches your eye. A little bit here along that line. Then you can use that same technique I was doing earlier of grabbing your clean, damp brush, smoothing, gently tug that color out. So creating a bit of a shadow back here, follow those veins. I really like my edges to be really dark, just like that. I think it gives it so much interest. Just gives it that kind of realistic dimension when you see, like I said, that contrast of dark and light. Okay, I'm going to drop that the line back here for these shadows, really dark mixture.
Shalene, we're getting some nice feedback about how you're teaching people, inspiring them to do more color mixing. And
good.
That's part of the reason we're doing this, to just kind of just hone your skills, improve your skills, try a new skill. So we're really grateful for all you for joining, and we hope it's been a relaxing experience, and you took a little time out of your schedule to participate. We appreciate that.
Absolutely. I know this process can be a little bit tedious, but I think it can also be very, very therapeutic to do those same kind of repetitive dropping color and smoothing it, dropping it and smoothing it.
Just want to remind everyone again, at the end of the class, there'll be a survey that you'll get an email from, so please give us some feedback. Also post your pictures at hashtag #MakeItWithMichael and hashtag Winsor, and I'll put that in the feed. And then as far as where can people follow you, Shalene?
Yes, so the main place that I post consistently is my Instagram, and that's Instagram. It's at Shailene Louise, and Shailene is S-H-E-A, which is actually opposite of how most people think to spell it. And then I'm also on YouTube at youtube.com/Shailene Louise, and I have some more tutorials over there and just some fun art videos and stuff like that. All right, so I am very close to being finished with this flower. To be honest, I could probably just, spend another 10 minutes just adding more and more and more. But I think it's, sometimes you gotta know when to stop. So I will stop in 1 second. I'm gonna just drop color in one more spot that I feel like it needs it, and that's right here along our first petal we drew, just right there against the stamen. The very, very last cherry on top step that we're going to do is we're going to grab that green with your size 1 brush, and we're going to just draw these little tiny fuzzies along the stem and on the poppy, because poppy stems and buds, they are fuzzy. So it's a really fun little detail. I like to save it for the end. And I'll hold it up for you in just a moment so you can see how that effect looks. Use your smallest brush, not too much water. And then right along the little bud we drew. So I go all along the outside of it, and then I will drop it on the inside as well. I'll hold that up for you. So much fun. And I'm gonna switch this. Here's one I did last night, and I actually, as far as like the difference between the two, I did spend a bit more time adding even more of that dark green mix, the sap green and ultramarine blue, and I added even more color. You can tell the difference here. When you have just a little bit more time and you add even more of those dark colors in those spots where the shadows are, it just adds that little extra something that makes it really pop. So yeah, there you have it. Let me go grab a quick. All right, so hopefully these are not hard to see because they're in plastic sleeves, but here's a few other things I've painted in the last couple years. This is a orange blossom painting that is one of the more popular designs in my shop. We got those really strong contrasts of kind of that light green versus the dark green, and that just gives it that interest, you know what I mean? Here's another really fun one. This was like a really colorful floral design I made. This was based off of after I lived in Tennessee for 7 years, and I made this painting using only flowers that I had taken pictures of during my 7 years of living there. So these were all real flowers that were pictures in my phone.
Lovely. They're beautiful. And we're getting some really nice feedback. So
thank you.
I just want to close because we're getting near the end here. Actually, we ran a little over, and appreciate everyone staying along. As Shailene said, just continue with that piece and to your liking. Give us some feedback with the survey, and make it with Michaels, #Winsor Newton to post your poppies and any other artwork. And then lastly, follow Shailene, and your Instagram is Shailene Louise, and I just put it on the feed as well.
Awesome.
So we just want to thank everyone for joining, and have a wonderful day. And thank you, Shailene, for providing such a lovely class for everyone. It was a relaxing session. Thank you for that.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Mwah. I'll see you soon.
Take care.
Bye.